Hello, everybody. My name is Meenakshi, and today I'm going to take a session on clause, which is a part of your syllabus of English language and technical communication. Now, what are clauses? Clauses are essential components of sentences, and their importance lies in their ability to convey meaning, provide structure, and facilitate effective communication. Now, look at this definition of clause. A clause comprises a group of words which includes a subject and a finite verb. The subject of a sentence is the doer or receiver of an action, whereas a finite verb is a verb that shows agreement with the subject and is marked for tense. A clause contains only one subject and one verb. The subject of a clause can at times be mentioned or hidden, but the verb must always be clear and apparent. There are two types of clause. One is independent clause and the other one is dependent clause. An independent clause is also known as principal clause, and it functions on its own to make a meaningful sentence. It looks much like a regular sentence. A dependent clause, on the other hand, is dependent on the principal clause to exist as a sentence. It does not have a complete meaning. A dependent clause is also known as a subordinate clause. Dependent clauses help the independent clauses to complete the sentence. Now look at these examples. When I was dating Diana, I had an accident. In this sentence, there are two parts. When I was dating Diana is the subordinate clause and I had an accident is the principal clause. Now look at the second part of the sentence, I had an accident. In this part, the subject is I and the verb is had. And this sentence, I had an accident, is a complete sentence as it has a complete meaning. But when you look at the first half of the sentence, when I was dating Diana, here the subject is I and the verbs are was dating. But this sentence, when I was dating Diana, the sentence is incomplete in meaning. That's why this is subordinate clause. And this sentence is dependent on the principal clause, I had an accident, in order to exist as a complete sentence. Similarly, in the example, I know the man who stole the watch. Here, I know the man is the principal clause. Who stole the watch is the subordinate clause. He bought a car which was too expensive. He bought a car is the principal clause. Which was too expensive is the subordinate clause. I know that he cannot do it. I know is the principal clause. That he cannot do it is the subordinate clause. He does not know where he was born. He doesn't know or he does not know is the principal clause. Where he was born is the subordinate clause. If you don't eat is the subordinate clause and I won't go is the principal clause. Now there are three types of dependent or subordinate clause. First is noun clause, next adjective clause, and the third one is the adverb clause. Now let's look at noun clause. A noun clause is a dependent clause that contains a subject and a verb, and it functions as a noun in a sentence. A noun has different functions in a sentence. Say, for example, a noun can be the subject of a verb. When I say Ram is a good boy, here Ram is the noun and it functions as the subject of the verb is. We get the subject of the verb by asking who or what to the verb. When I ask who is a good boy, the answer is Ram. So Ram is the subject of the verb is. Similarly, a noun clause can act as the subject of a verb. A noun clause will comprise of a subject and a verb. Look at this example here. What Alicia said made her friends cry. Here, what Alicia said is the noun clause and it functions as the subject of the verb made. When we ask the question, what made her friends cry? The answer that we get is what Alicia said. So here, what Alicia said is noun clause functioning as the subject of the verb made. Similarly, in the next sentence, what Megan wrote surprised her family. When we ask the question, what surprised her family, the answer is what Megan wrote. So here, what Megan wrote is noun clause functioning as the subject of the verb surprised. Keep in mind that when noun clause functions as the subject of the verb, it comes towards the beginning of the sentence, or it is placed towards the beginning of the sentence. How the boy behaved was not very polite. Here, how the boy behaved is noun clause functioning as the subject of the verb was. Next, noun clause can also act as the direct object of a verb. We get the object of the verb by asking what to the verb. But just as the subject of the verb is placed before the verb, the object of the verb is placed after the verb. Here, she didn't realize that the directions were wrong. Here, the principal clause is she didn't realize. That the directions were wrong is the subordinate clause. When we ask the question, she didn't realize what, or what didn't she realize, the answer is that the directions were wrong. So here, the verbs did and realize, these are the verbs. And when you ask the question, what she didn't realize, the answer is that the directions were wrong. So that the directions were wrong here is noun clause functioning as the direct object of the verb didn't realize. Similarly, he didn't know why the stove wasn't working. Here, why the stove wasn't working is the noun clause functioning as the direct object of the verb didn't know. He didn't know what, or what he didn't know. The answer is why the stove wasn't working. Next, noun clause can also act as the object of a preposition. We get the object of a preposition by asking what to the preposition. Look at the example here. Harry is not the best provider of what Margie needs. So here we have the preposition of. So Harry is not the best provider of what? The answer is what Margie needs. So here, what Margie needs is the noun clause functioning as the object of the preposition of. Similarly, Josephine is not responsible for what Alex decided to do. Here, the principal clause is Josephine is not responsible for up to this. When we ask the question, Josephine is not responsible for what? The answer is what Alex decided to do. So here, what Alex decided to do is the noun clause functioning as the object of the preposition for. Noun clause can also function as an adjective complement. An adjective complement modifies an adjective or adds some more meaning to the adjective. For example, I am happy they finally got married. In this sentence, principal clause is I am happy and they finally got married is the subordinate clause. Here, the subordinate conjunction that is missing. Though it is not apparent, still one has to understand that it is there, hidden from view. I am happy that they finally got married. Now, here the principal clause has an adjective happy. The subordinate clause, they finally got married, is complementing the adjective happy. It is adding more meaning to the adjective happy. Similarly, grandma is worried you might get stuck in the blizzard. Here, again, the subordinate conjunction that is missing. Grandma is worried that you might get stuck in the blizzard. You have to understand you might get stuck in the blizzard is the subordinate clause. And here it is complementing the adjective worried. Grandma is worried about what? The answer is you might get stuck in the blizzard. So here The noun clause type is noun clause as an adjective complement. Next, noun clause can also function as the complement of a verb of incomplete predication. Now, verbs of incomplete predication are is, am, are, was, were, will be, shall be, etc. These verbs need a complement after them in order to make the sentence complete in meaning. Say, for example, my hope is that everyone here becomes friends. Here, the principal clause is my hope is. Subordinate clause is that everyone here becomes friends. So, that everyone here becomes friends is the complement of the verb of incomplete predication is. Next example, the winner will be whoever gets the most votes. Here, the verb of incomplete predication is will be, and whoever gets the most votes is the noun clause, and it is complementing the verb of incomplete predication will be. The next type of noun clause is noun clause in opposition to a noun or a pronoun. When noun clause is in opposition to a noun or a pronoun, it stands for a noun or it represents for a noun or a pronoun in the principal clause. Say, for example, your statement that you didn't take the money can't be believed. Here, half of the piece is towards the beginning, your statement, and half towards the end, can't be believed. So principal clause is your statement can't be believed. And the subordinate clause is in the middle, that you didn't take the money. Now, the subordinate clause, that you didn't take the money, stands for a noun in the principal clause, and that noun is statement. So, this clause is functioning as noun clause in opposition to a noun or a pronoun. The pronoun here is not present, so it is in opposition to a noun statement. Now, you can place this entire clause that you didn't take the money in the position of the noun statement, and still the sentence will carry complete meaning. Say, for example, that you didn't take the money can't be believed. Okay, so here, if I place that you didn't take the money, this entire part of the sentence, if I place in the position of statement, still it carries a complete meaning. Similarly, it isn't clear who has done this. Now, who has done this? This entire clause is standing or it represents for the pronoun it in the principal clause. I can put this part of the sentence, who has done this, in the position of it, and still the sentence will be complete in meaning. Say, for example, who has done this isn't clear. Now we are done with the types of noun clause. The next clause is adjective clause. An adjective clause is also called a relative clause. It is a subordinate clause that modifies a noun or pronoun in the principal clause. It tells which one or what kind. Adjective clauses usually come right after the nouns they modify. Now look at the examples here. Here is the mountain that we are going to climb. So here is the mountain is the principal clause. That we are going to climb is the adjective clause, and it is modifying the noun mountain. Next clause is my blue tennis shoes, which used to be my mom's, were under the bed. Here, my blue tennis shoes is the principal clause, but not the full principal clause. The other part of the principal clause is were under the bed. So my blue tennis shoes were under the bed is the principal clause, and the subordinate clause is in the middle, which used to be my mom's. Now, which used to be my mom's is the subordinate clause modifying the noun shoes. The next example that we can see is Daniel is the boy who stood first in the class. Here, who stood first in the class is the adjective clause, and it is describing the noun boy. So, That's all about adjective clause. Let's now move to the adverb clause. Now, adverb clause is a clause which has a group of words with a subject and a predicate, and these group of words function as adverbs in a sentence. Say, for example, before you leave, please turn off the lights. Here, before you leave is the subordinate clause, and please turn off the lights is the principal clause. Now, before you leave, these words, they are part of adverb clause and they tell when to turn off the lights. Okay, so this is adverb clause and it is mentioning the time of turning off the lights. So before you leave, this adverb clause modifies the verb turn in the principal clause. Similarly, we cancel the trip because the weather has gotten worse. Here, because the weather has gotten worse is the adverb clause and it is modifying the verb cancel. Why did we cancel the trip? The answer is because the weather has gotten worse. So you can see, like an adverb which modifies a verb, an adjective or another adverb, adverb clause also modifies sometimes a verb, sometimes an adjective, and sometimes another adverb. Now, types of adverb clause. The first type is adverb clause of time. Adverb clause of time tells us about when something happens. This clause is introduced with words such as when, whenever, before, after, as, while, until, as soon as, and since. For example, I stopped running when I saw my friend. So if I ask the question, when did I stop running? The answer is when I saw my friend. So when I saw my friend tells the time when an action is done. Okay, so next one, Annie gets excited whenever she sees a dog. So when does Annie gets excited? The answer is whenever she sees a dog. Next is adverb clause of place. Adverb clause of place tells us where an action is done or where something happens. This clause is introduced with words such as where, wherever, and whence. So, for example, wherever I go, I always see a McDonald's restaurant. So here, where do I see a McDonald's restaurant? The answer is wherever I go. Next one, I have put it where I can find it again. I have put it as a principal clause. Where? Where have I put it? The answer is where I can find it again. So where I can find it again is adverb clause of place. Okay, the next type of clause is adverb clause of condition. This clause tells us about the circumstances under which something happens. This clause is introduced with words such as if, unless, on condition that, or provided that. Now look at the example here. I only watch TV if my favorite show is on. Now, I only watch TV is the principal clause. What is the condition? The condition is if my favorite show is on. So if my favorite show is on is the adverb clause of condition and it modifies the verb watch. He won't go to university unless he studies very hard. So unless he studies very hard is the adverb clause of condition. Okay, it modifies the verbs won't go. So here we can see that adverb clause of condition tells us the condition or the circumstances under which something will happen. The next clause is adverb clause of purpose. Adverb clause of purpose show why something is happening or the intended result. This clause starts with words such as so that, lest, and in order that. Now look at the example here. He took off his shoes so that he would not ruin the carpet. He took off his shoes is the principal clause. What is the purpose of taking off the shoes? The answer is so that he would not ruin the carpet. Similarly, walk carefully, lest you should fall. Here, walk carefully is the principal clause. The subject in the principal clause at times is not mentioned. Here, walk carefully means you walk carefully. Now, the next part, lest you should fall, is the adverb clause of purpose. It tells the purpose of why the subject should walk carefully, and that is to avoid falling. The next type of clause is adverb clause of reason. Adverb clause of cause or reason tells why something happens or the reason for what is happening. This clause begins with the conjunction because, since, and as. For example, I listen to classical music because it sounds beautiful. So, because it sounds beautiful is the adverb clause of reason. It tells why I listen to classical music. Similarly, since you're so kind to me, I will help you. I will help you is the principal clause. Why? The answer is since you're so kind to me. So here, since you're so kind to me is adverb clause of cause. The next clause is adverb clause of result. This clause tells us about consequences of any action. This clause starts with words such as so that and such that. We usually put an adjective between so and that. Now look at the example given here. I was so tired that I couldn't stay awake. So I was so tired is the principal clause. And what was the consequence of being tired? The answer is that I couldn't stay awake. Similarly, the meal was so delicious that we made it again the next day. Here the principal clause is the meal was so delicious. Just after so, we have the adjective delicious. So up to delicious is the principal clause. And what was the result of it? That we made it again the next day. So that we made it again next day is the adverb clause of result. The next clause is adverb clause of comparison of degree. This clause of comparison is used to compare things or ideas. They often begin with the conjunctions than or as, ... as. At times, there is an adjective in between the two as. For example, my brother is older than he looks. My brother is older is the principal clause. Than he looks is the subordinate clause and it is adverb clause of degree. She is as beautiful as she is smart. She is as beautiful is the principal clause and as she is smart is the adverb clause of degree. So here, two ideas are compared. One is beauty and the other is smartness. So she is as beautiful as she is smart is a sentence which has a principal clause as she is as beautiful and subordinate clause as she is smart. The next type of clause is adverb clause of concession. This clause describes contrasting statement or circumstances despite which something happens. It usually begins with words such as although, though, even if, even though, whereas. So for example, although it rained, they enjoyed their walk. So it means that the weather was rainy, but still they enjoyed their walk. Okay, so despite the rainy weather, they had a comfortable, enjoyable walk. So although it rained is adverb clause of concession. Similarly, Joseph was very popular, whereas his brother had more enemies than friends. So whereas his brother had more enemies than friends is the adverb clause of concession. And even though I was full, I couldn't stop eating. So even though I was full is again here the adverb clause of concession. The next clause is adverb clause of manner. This clause shows us how something happens or the manner in which an action takes place. It usually begins with conjunctions such as like, as though, or as if. Say, for example, she looked as though she was in pain. So, as though she was in pain is the adverb clause of manner. Ryan walked past as if he hadn't seen us. So, Ryan walked past is the principal clause. As if he hadn't seen us is the adverb clause of manner. So, now we come to the end of this discussion on clause. Thank you.